Yesterday I covered the second part of the eastern section, that was Sadhana Bhakti, which had two parts to it. Also the previous day, and it was Sadhana Bhakti of the Vaidhi type and Nidra, Anuga type, both are sadhana. So the definition of Sadhana Bhakti was that it results in knowledge. So that's the next stage. We have third chapter on Bhava Bhakti. And this is the definition. Sudasata Visheshatma Prema Suryam Sat Samyatma Ruchi Vis Chitta Mastrunya Vritta Uchite. When one begins to experience bliss, a ray of prema consisting of the Samvit and Vladini Shakti coming from Krishna's Sarup Shakti, and the heart becomes softened by attraction to Krishna, it's called Bhava. Of course, the heart here is in the physical heart, it means the Atman, or within the Atman, the emotional color of the Atman. So one becomes very, very attracted to Krishna at that point. Of course, any form of the Supreme Lord also. And the important point of here is it's like prema, it's a ray of prema. We have a ray of the sun. So you can say it's like prema, but it's also smaller, less intense. And one experiences bliss, which is of the nature of coming from the Samvit and Vladini Shaktis, which are combined here. Okay? So, you can say that the devotee experiences a bhava which is composed of Vladini and Samvit Shaktis of the Lord. Okay? And previously in Sadhana Bhakti it was explained that this bhava is not created, it is manifested. So in other words, Krishna's Sarup Shakti is never created. It's simply manifested in the jiva. So it manifests nicely in the bhava stage. And it becomes even more spectacular in prema. So, this of course leads to perception of the Lord. Samvit is the knowledge Shakti of the Lord by which creates spiritual perception. And so our spiritual eye, our spiritual nose, spiritual touch is all from Samvit Shakti. And then we can perceive the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord reveals himself to the person at this point. So by the definition of sadhana bhakti was engagement of the senses to attain bhava. And we're using these senses actually. But the result is that we get spiritual sense by using the senses. This does not happen in jnana or yoga because they're not trying to employ their senses as the process. They're trying to stop their senses, they're trying to stop their mind. So consequently they get liberation, but the Atman never develops spiritual senses because there's no necessity of it. They're not serving anybody, they're not seeing the Lord, they're just existing. So those senses don't develop in those persons, but through bhakti we begin to develop the senses by serving with these senses, which are so-called material, we serve the Lord. And this develops our spiritual senses in the Atman self. So this is the first perception takes place in the bhava stage. Huh? So where bhava was that experience of bliss. Huh? But of course it's also the relationship, it's the sthayi bhava, or one's essential main relationship with Krishna, which could be Dasya or Sakya or Saladin or Shanta. That sthayi bhava manifests its qualities at this point. So we get the perception, and we get perception of bliss. We establish the sthayi bhava and we feel bliss in our relationship with Lord because of Vladini Shakti. So these are the special aspects of the Lord's personality, so to speak. If we realize Brahman, we don't realize the Shaktis. So the bliss, that Vladini does not manifest in the impersonal state. So, previously also we discussed in the general definition of Krishna Anusilanam, there were two types of Anusilanam. There was the Cheshta Rupa and the Bhava Rupa. So this is where the Bhava Rupa becomes prominent. Previously in silence, the Cheshta Rupa was the Cheshta. Now, when we get to Bhava, that does not mean that the Cheshta disappears. So the Cheshta Rupa Bhakti continues. We saw in Raganuga that there was a combination of external service in your external body, and then you start developing your internal service as well. So it's internal, external. So here there's a prominence with the actual bhava manifesting here, which was not manifested in Raganuga actually. We don't get bhava then. It's a sadhana that leads to the bhava. But we can also get sadhana that leads to vaidhi sadhana can also lead to bhava. So either way, we can do it and get to the bhava. So where we manifest our sthayi bhava. So here this becomes prominent, but the service doesn't disappear. We can do external service if we still have a material body. And when we get to prema, then we give up the material body and we continue the service in our spiritual body, in the spiritual world. So the Cheshta Rupa Bhakti never disappears. It's always there, but it simply transfers into the spiritual body at a certain point. So it's like the ray of prema, like the ray of the sun. So it's not really complete yet. But we have this experience of bliss due to the lighting some of the Shaktis, but it's like one ray of the sun. So consequently, bliss is not going to be as intense as prema. In prema, the quality of prema was sandrananda, intense bliss. In Bhava Bhakti, it's intense enough to make one consider liberation to be useless. But in Prem Bhakti, it becomes very intense. So that's a little bit of different. And consequently, the ecstatic symptoms of Sattvika Bhavas that manifest here are not so strong. There's a few, not so intense, as is Prema. So though it is the spiritual that manifests within the Atma, and is independent of matter, the symptoms begin to manifest within the body itself, and that's why we get these symptoms manifested in the devotee, the Sattvika Bhavas, etc., and manifesting with mental functions, etc. So that bhava is a taste for Krishna, so the attraction to Krishna, and it also manifests more taste for Krishna. So it's not sadhana at this point. We're not practicing something. We've attained meeting with Krishna, and then the bhava itself creates more and more attraction for Krishna as we do more and more service like that. So we're not practicing to get anything anymore. It simply automatically develops. So in that sense, even the Vaidhi Bhakti that was done becomes spontaneous at this point. It's not that I'm thinking of a rule and then I serve Krishna and bhava, so it's even Vaidhi Bhakti. No, it's spontaneous. What are the causes? Normal method is sadhana. We go through sadhana of either the Vaidhi type, and we go to bhava, and from there we go to prema, or probably the Raganuga type, either way. So we can proceed to bhava. So we can realize Krishna either way, and we can develop our spiritual body either way. So yesterday I mentioned about the Siddha, that's one method they use in Raganuga Bhakti. They don't use that in Vaidhi Bhakti. But nevertheless, if one does Vaidhi Bhakti and goes to bhava and prema, you also get a spiritual body. So it develops, but there's not a special intention of developing it as there is in Raganuga. So that makes the Raganuga process a little quicker to develop because you're always concentrating on your so-called spiritual body and then you attain one like that. So that makes it a little easier. Okay, so the cause is usually sadhana. It's a normal method, we get to bhava. But sometimes it's mercy of Krishna. And as we go to Kripa Siddhi, it could be Krishna's mercy. Krishna may just give some blessings, I bless you to get bhava, and you get bhava. He may show himself to a person suddenly, and then because you've seen the Lord, obviously you can see the Lord, then you must have developed your spiritual eyes, so that in that sense you develop bhava. Or somehow through the heart, manifest through the heart. Then we have mercy of devotees. So a person may have done bhakti or may not have done bhakti, but very quickly they advance. So a prime example of that is Mrvari the hunter. He was not a devotee at all, and then Narada Muni became merciful to him, and in 3 months he got bhava. So that's very quick advancement. So that has not due to sadhana, but due to mercy of Narada Muni. So, and of course, Prahlad, he got the mercy of Narada Muni when he was in the womb because Narada Muni was teaching his mother, he was giving instructions to his mother, and he heard in the womb. So when he came out of the womb, he was very, very advanced by then. He was already at a very advanced level. So that's by mercy of devotees. So that is there, but of course that devotee also has to be very advanced. In order to give bhava, you would have to be in bhava or prema in order to empower a person. So this is done, but it's not very common. For most of the people, of course, we don't need Narada Muni or anything like that. So it's usually through sadhana. You go through sadhana, then you get to bhava. It sometimes may appear as if not by any particular person or anything, you suddenly get bhava in this lifetime. So the explanation for that is that you actually advance up to bhava in a previous life, that there was some offense or obstacle, and in this lifetime the offense disappeared, then suddenly the bhava may appear. That's also rare. It's possible also. So that means the sadhana must have been done in a previous lifetime in that case. So the bhava has different types, which these bhavas are not rasa yet. They're simply sthayi bhavas. So these sthayi bhavas, the five, the primary ones, they mix with other elements. And we have vibhava, anubhava, satvika bhava, vibhachari bhava, and sthayi bhava. This is the sthayi bhava that manifests here. So one manifests a relationship with Shanta, Sthayi Bhava, or Dasya, or Sakya, or Salya, Madhurya. Then, when we do service to Krishna in these moods, it mixes with the Anubhava, Satvika Bhava, etc., and we get rasa out of this. But because it's not so strong, therefore we can say the rasa is not really complete until we get the prema also. So the Sthayi Bhava is there, but the rasa is not so intense. He also mentions, Rupa Goswami also mentions some qualities that manifest at this stage, which he called anubhavas, or external manifestations. Tolerance, not wasting time, detachment from material enjoyment, absence of pride, confidence in the Lord's mercy, longing for the Lord, a taste for chanting the name, attachment to hearing about the Lord, and attachment to living in Dham. So these may be some of the external signs that we can tell a person is on bhava stage, that he's completely absorbed in chanting and hearing and living in the Dham, etc. And he has these qualities of complete detachment from material things. In the Madhurya Kadambini, there Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur describes the different stages, and by the time one gets to bhava, one is quite, I would say, intoxicated with the Lord. So people will look at the person and think he's crazy because he's no longer interested in anything in the material world. He doesn't want to talk to people. He doesn't associate with people in a friendly way. He's just all about himself, always thinking of Krishna, and and completely absorbed in him. So quite an elevated state. So, though these qualities are there, sometimes people may imitate those qualities. And we get what's called Rapi is Bhava, same as Bhava. So we get the Rapi Abhas or Bhava Bhas, which is not real Bhava or Rapi, but it's an imitation. So people will imitate a person on that stage of Bhava, and particularly the symptoms. And they will faint and cry and shiver when they hear the name of Krishna, etc. It is quite common in India, in Bengal especially. One in the 1970s when we went there to Calcutta, and then one person came into Prabhupada's room and they said, "Gopal!" And he went into a trance and fell on the floor like that. This is a common occurrence. And then you'll see in the what is called the 24-hour kirtans they do, and each group kirtaniers who are actually professionals. And they do kirtan for 1 hour each, and for parts of the day and night like that. They go go 24 hours or 2 days or 3 days or whatever, just rotate and have an hour or 2 periods on every day at a certain time. And they're supposed to do the raga at that time also. Anyway, they're professionals, so they will often also have ecstatic symptoms. And they will cry and shiver, fall on the ground, roll around, and things like that as well. But they're ultimately professionals, so they're just, this is show. So this is a type of abhas. It's not real rati, but it's an imitation rati, and they have certain material purposes in mind. So that's considered very low, not very good. So they don't really have devotion as such, but they're just doing it for other reasons. Admiration, profession, money, etc. So, of course, there are 2 types. The pratibimba, these are imitated symptoms. So they will, it's like actors, and not for any good intentions. That's not good at all. And then the other one is called the Chaya Ratinavas. So these are not people who are generally trying to deceive others, but they have some, let's say, sentimental heart in the very beginning, and due to that sentiment, very quickly they may develop ecstatic-like symptoms of crying and whatever like that, even though they're not advanced, through sadhana or anything like that. So it's not with bad intentions. So they get some, some spiritual taste, and they get excited by that, and then they show ecstatic symptoms. So this is nothing too wrong with this, and of course they can really develop to real rati if they associate with proper devotees. So that's called the chaya, that's called the pratibimba. So this stage is it's not actually, it's divided from prema as being separate. And we will say why, because you get an experience of Krishna. So there's several reasons. One, of course, is the intensity is not there, and it's called the bud of prema, prema ankura. It's only a bud of prema, and then it fully blossoms in prema, flower bud. But the why it doesn't fully manifest is that there is still anartha or obstacle present here. One is not completely pure. In spite of that, the Lord will manifest Himself and have some spiritual vision, etc. But there's still some anartha there. So generally, the karmas and desires and stuff have been annihilated by the end of asakti stage, by the process and bhakti. So what continues as an obstacle, and then we get to, of course, we get to bhava. Finally, the ahankara disappears, and there's a remaining obstacle of the effects of previous aparadha. They can disturb the heart at this stage. So the aparadha is more difficult to remove the traces than karmas, etc. So this can remain in the bhava stage of plus problems. So it is said that Bharat Maharaj he had attained bhava stage. But then he forgot the Lord completely, even though he had a vision of the Lord and was having ecstatic symptoms. He forgot the Lord completely, became attached to a deer. And he ended his life thinking of a deer, not a vision. So how could he fall from bhava after seeing the Lord? And the answer is previous aparadha, disturbed his heart, so he became attached to a deer. Of all things, a deer. But so that is the effect of aparadha. It can disturb even the bhava stage. So that's why it's not for prema. Prema, there's no obstacle, nothing, so you cannot fall from the stage at all. There is no possibility of anartha. So that's the difference between bhava and prema. So we have a little division between the two. So if one commits aparadha in the bhava stage, how would one do that? Usually due to some unfortunate association with another person who is an aparadhi or something like that, and develops friendship or something, impersonation or whatever, then one may get influenced. So one may commit a serious aparadha, then the bhava will disappear. If it's a medium aparadha, it turns to a bhava box with slight symptoms. And if it's mild aparadha, then the bhava weakens a little bit. So according to the intensity of the aparadha, we get different decrease of the bhava. So I said, bhava is not a pure state. So therefore, one could find faults in the bhava. But Rupa Goswami says you shouldn't do that. Because this person is very rare. To get to the Baba stage where Krishna manifests himself, he doesn't mind the faults, because he manifests himself. So if we start pointing all the faults, then that's our problem. So one should overlook the faults, so to speak. And some of them may not be real faults, because we cannot understand the person as they advance upwards and his conduct. He may not follow the conduct of society. He may not follow the varnashram rules. He may not follow the rules of cleanliness even, or the deity worship rules. And we may criticize. Huh? But it's beyond our level. We cannot criticize that person. So Rupa Goswami compares this to the moon. So the moon is considered to be in poetry to be very beautiful, and especially the full moon. And if you want to criticize the moon, you can look at the spots on the moon and say, it's not so nice after us, little spots up there on the moon. Like this. So that's, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't criticize the moon because there's spots on it. So we should not criticize the person in Bhava Bhakti because we see apparent faults on it. Because it's a very, very rare stage. Very rare stage. And if you make some fault, generally the Lord takes care of that person because he is such a rare person. And the Lord is very attractive. And of course, even Krishna says, if you commit the most sinful activity, you're still my devotee. I said you're my devotee. So that's on sadhana bhakti, when you speak of Bhava Bhakti. So Bhava Bhakti, definitely the Lord takes care of those devotees. And we see in the case of Bharat, he became a deer because of his estate, but he had his memory, even as a deer. And then in memory as next lifetime, he got prema. So through that arrangement, he advanced actually, and he got prema state by the arrangement of the Lord. So the Lord does not forget the devotee, even if he makes mistakes on this high level also. Okay, so that covers. And then we have the last. This is the shortest of the 4 chapters because the rest of the book is about prema and rasa. So this is the shortest. And of course, when we get to Madhurya Prema, even that is very short. Madhurya Rasa is very short because there's a whole book on that. And the Ujjwal in the Mind written by Rupa Goswami, in which he discusses all the different types of gopis and the different moods of the gopis and the different forms that Krishna takes for each type of gopi, etc. And then he analyzes the different elements of the rasa, like the Vibhava, and Manabhava, and Sapika Bhava, and Devacharya Bhava, and Sai Bhava also in that way, and separation and the meeting, etc. So it's quite elaborate description of the rasa, so that's a completely separate book. So anyway, this first part is like an introduction to the rest of the book, this prema, because the rest of the book is about analyzing rasa and prema. So here we have another definition. Samyak masrunata svanto. The heart becomes completely softened. So previously it was softened, but here it's completely softened. And it's mamapa ati sayankita. It is marked by complete or extreme attachment to the Lord. Completely melted and attached to the Lord with possessiveness, great possessiveness of the Lord. And it's Bhava Sa-eva Sandra Atma. So previously there was the Suda Sattva nature, which was Samvit Padin Shaktis, causing Ananda. Now it is Sandra, very condensed bliss. Not just bliss, but intense bliss. And this is called prema by the intelligent. So it's an extension of the Bhava state in a more intense way in terms of bliss and attraction to Krishna, possession of Krishna, etc. And what is the cause? Generally we go through Bhava. First we start with sadhana, and we go to Bhava, and we get to prema. So that's the cause in one sense. And it can be through Vaidhi Bhakti. We do Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. That gives us a Vaidhi to Bhava, Bhava Bhakti arising from that, and from that we go to prema. Or we can go from Raganuga Sadhana, and we go to Raganuga to Bhava, and from there we go to prema. So either way we can realize the Lord, and either way we can realize Krishna. Either way. And either way we can even realize Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan. either way. But as I said, the difference is there is awareness of Krishna as Supreme Lord if we do the Vaidhi Bhakti, and there's not where we do the Raganuga Bhakti. That's the difference. So that's the usual way. The other is mercy. As before, mercy, Krishna, blessing, get prema, you have develop prema suddenly, or he shows himself in such a way that you develop prema or internally, whatever. So for those persons who have practiced a little bit of Vaidhi Bhakti, then he gives them this Mahatmya Jnana prema. One becomes aware of the Lord's greatness. You begin a little practice, and the Lord is very great. Mercy on you, you get prema, then it will be of that variety that you started with. And so if you started with Vaidhi Bhakti, and you were going through, an action of Vritti, Vaidhi Bhakti, or Nishta, then the Lord had mercy, then you get prema, then it would be awareness of the Lord's powers. Even if it's Krishna, it could be Vishnu, but also Krishna even, like aware of his powers. Or he could be merciful to someone who is Raganuga Bhakti, beginning his Raganuga practice, and suddenly gets prema, then it would be called Kevala prema. That is, no awareness of Krishna as Supreme Lord. If it's not Krishna and it's Rama or anyone else, automatically it's Aishwarya Yuta. We are aware of him as Supreme Lord, etc. It's the nature of those forms. With Krishna, it can go either way, according to our initial starting point. We started with Vaidhi Bhakti or Raganuga Bhakti. So therefore, realization either way. So what are the activities in prema? We saw, of course, in Bhava stage that, of course, they're not going according to rule and regulation, obviously, but there's great attraction to hearing and chanting and staying in the dawn, worshiping the Lord, etc. Great absorption on that. So that will, of course, be in prema also. But both of these stages are very spontaneous, so one can never predict or describe fully the activities of the person. And some of the activities may contradict our normal concept of what is bhakti or whatever. So we have to be very careful with studying the people on the higher stages of bhava and prema. So Rupa Goswami says his activities cannot be understood even by men knowledgeable of scripture. So just by looking at him and looking at the scripture, we cannot always detect who he is or what he's doing or whether he's on prema or not. It's very, very difficult. And we see that in the life of Lord Chaitanya himself, when he was in Puri, or even when he was in Navadvip. People thought he was going mad because he was crying out Krishna's name in the middle of this class. He was giving grammatical class, and then he'd hear Krishna's name and he'd call out Krishna's name, and the students would think, oh, he's gone mad, or something like this. So when he got even very extreme in Puri, where he developed the most intense ecstatic symptoms, and such that his separation was there from Krishna, because he was in the mood of Radha. So he'd be crying all night, and they had to lock him in the room because he'd wander out of the room like a madman or whatever like that. So very, very difficult to predict the activities of people on that high level. And we see that case even in the cases like Vamsi Das Babaji. So Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati says he's a great elevated devotee. But if one looked at him, one would think, oh, is this an old man and he's smoking a pipe and he's got dirty clothes on? So how would you know? Bhakti-Siddhanta says he's actually a very elevated soul. But from our point of view, no. And we have a case of Lord Shastra Babaji apparently had deities, but how did he worship them? He would just take them, put them in the ganga, take them out, offer them a rotting plant with chilies. So, how you can have affection for the Lord like that, offering raw eggplants with chilies. So that's our conception of the Lord. He's on a different level, so we cannot criticize him for this. We don't know their intentions at all. Very, very difficult to analyze them. So therefore we cannot actually criticize him. So beyond us. So this is actually the conclusion of these two chapters. Very short chapter on prema and a slightly short chapter on knowledge. So this is the introduction to the book. The rest of the book is about prema, and it analyzes the 5 ingredients of rasa in the next section, the southern section. Then there's analysis of all the 5 primary rasas in terms of the different ingredients in the next section, which is the western section. And then there's an analysis in the same way of all the 7 secondary rasas in the last portion, northern section. And that way we get all the 7 rasas covered. This gives the devotee a general idea of what prema is in the spiritual world. Obviously, we don't understand everything because we have to experience it, but this is for the sadhakas so that we can understand something of the nature of the goal that we're trying to achieve. And of course, it gives exposure to the different rasas, so therefore we get some opportunity to develop attraction for any of the different rasas of Krishna. Okay, so that's it. Any questions?
All right. What point the self-realization happens for the devotee? I mean,
Self-realization or God-realization?
self-realization.
Self.
That I know I'm not the body, I'm Atma.
Oh, I see. It's simultaneous, more or less. Okay. So we do not, the self-realization or Atma-Gyan is the main goal of Jnana Yoga and even of Astanga Yoga. And that is, then that Atma-Jnana is equated with Brahman. So one merges into the other, and then the Atma-Jnana becomes Brahman realization, actually. So once that self-realization is a little bit of a dangerous term for us because if it end there, it ends in impersonal Brahman realization. So therefore that's not our goal as such, the self-realization. It's a step towards the goal if we go from jnana to bhakti later on. But if we stop at that, then it's not our goal. So in developing bhakti then, our main concentration is Brahman, Supreme Lord, not ourselves. But in developing the relationship, we're actually developing the Atma's relationship, not our bodily relationship, because that's temporary. So we're developing the Atma's relationship with the Lord. So as we advance, then because of the nature of the attraction and the increase of bhakti, the material identification begins to become less and less and less until we get to bhava stage when the ahankara is destroyed. So technically, that's our Atma realization, but it's never separate from the realization of the Lord. It's just an automatic thing that we're no longer identifying with the material body, but we're not actually just, I want to realize I'm Atma. Atma's trying to realize Krishna. That's what's happening. So automatically we become free from the ahankara and identity with the body in the bhava stage. But then the devotee thinks moksha libhuta kriti, that endeavors for liberation are useless, actually. Just getting rid of the material body and understanding Atma is much less than realizing the body.
So when you mentioned about developing the spiritual senses, like your spiritual eye to see the Lord, how does it in turn turns to the devotee? How does it relate to your material? There's still the material senses, like is there a correlation between the spiritual senses and the material senses?
Yeah. Well, as long as we're in the material world, of course, we have the two sets. In bhava stage, they begin developing prema, they're fully developed. So we'll have the spiritual eye and we'll have the external eye. As it was said, that the bhava kind of inundates the mind and the senses also, so that we see with these eyes also. They're kind of spiritual eyes at this time because they're inundated with bhava. So we begin to see a little bit differently everything in relation to Krishna. As with Lord Chaitanya, when he's in Puri, you see that he would look at the sand dune and he would go downhill. And then he would go and just enter into the Leela, go downhill and see the gopis there arranging flowers or like that. Or you'd see the cloud in the sky and the color of the cloud is Krishna's color, and then you immediately see Krishna like that. So the things of the material world also stimulate, act as stimuli for the realization instead of material objects.
My question relates to just on Aparad. Just if you could help me understand the distinction between Baba and Aparad in terms of classification, the implication, and then the rectification.
Was it in Baba's days, the Aparad?
No, just the broader classification between Aparada and Papa.
Aparad?
And Papa.
Sin.
Oh, yeah.
Aparad concern, of course, there's different type of aparad. There's nam aparads, we have save aparads, we have Vaishnava aparads, and then we have jiva aparads also. So these are the classification that Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives in Vaishnava Rahasya and in Harinam Chittaman. So how is it distinct from papa or sin? Sin, we can say, is a general aparad against living entities. In other words, violence against any living entity, plant or animal or human being, we can call it a sin. And we disturb them in some way, or we injure, we kill unnecessarily, or even if it's accidental, it's somewhat of a pop, but if it's intentional and unnecessary, then it becomes more of a sin. So that's sin. Aparad is, let's say, concerning the devotee, devotional service of the Supreme Lord. So, by doing violence against devotees, or criticizing devotees, or thinking badly of devotees, that becomes Vaishnava aparad. We have the nam aparads. Among them, we think of the name as being material, as being limited, like karma kanda, giving material results, and that the name of Krishna is like the name of a devata, etc. So that's the nam aparad. The process of bhakti and the name are material things. And then we have aparads against the Supreme Lord, the seva aparad, so basically the deity form in the temple. So somehow we disrespect the deity by uncleanliness, bad behavior, carelessness, etc. That's called the seva aparad. So these are all aparads. Of those, the nam aparads, and within them we say the Vaishnava aparad, those are more serious than the seva aparads. But basically, if it's unintentional, accidental, that's not very serious. But if it is intentional, we have hostility towards Krishna, or the process of bhakti, or the devotees, we have hostility, then that's where it becomes very problematic, and it helps destroy the bhakti that is being produced. Whereas the sin itself does not do so, because Krishna says, even if you must sin over a sin, you're still not a devotee. So the sin itself, general sin, does not in any way affect the bhakti much at all. If it becomes repeated sin, of course, it could be sin on the strength of chanting the holy name, then it becomes aparad, and then it does affect. But if it's this accidental sin, then the Lord forgives that. So the aparad is more serious, and the Lord is not inclined, especially the Vaishnava aparad, to forgive that. So that the effects are more serious.
It looks like this process will take many works to go all
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
Prabhupada often writes in his books that in one life one can go back to Godhead life.
It is possible, and we have many examples in the Bhagavatam like that. Like even Ajamil, he started at 0, and after he came back to life, then he went to Vaikuntha eventually, even though he was an old man. So it is possible. But generally, usually our acharyas indicate that it takes many lifetimes. Just to get to Shraddha takes many lifetimes. An accidental, Agyata Sukriti to get to Shraddha. Once we get Shraddha, then we meet devotees. And it could be quick, depending on the mercy we get from the devotees and their expertise in guiding us. It could be very quick. Or it could be more gradual. We see Narada Muni as an example where in one lifetime he got up to Baba. And then he stopped. The Lord said, I'm not going to show myself again. And by your longing, then you purify yourself, then you come to prema. So it took Narada Muni one lifetime. And we see that Bharat Maharaj, he got up to Baba, then he fell to give a deer. And the next life, 3 lifetimes in Baba to prema took him. So, and generally it takes a little longer for the normal person. But there's also no worry in one sense, because Nehavi Karmanasa today, the process of bhakti is not destroyed, it continues life after life. So we feel fortunate that whatever we get this lifetime, we don't lose as long as we don't do serious aparadas. And then we continue next lifetime, eventually we get to perfection.
jiva being envies to the Lord, he comes back to the material world. So, and also we study that once we go back to God, like there is no chance to come back to that. So, this Aishwarya Baba and Guru Vrindavan, Aishwarya Vrindavan, is it like, Kevala Prema is it possible to link to this envious nature because they don't know that it's not shape?
No. That the aspect of the raga, if we go to Raga Nuga Bhakti and we don't see the Lord as the Lord, is simply a more intimate relationship, much more intense, and it gives rise to more bliss. Not that it's less than anyway. Kevala Prema. So it's more intense actually, and that is why that's the emphasis that Lord Chaitanya puts on Radha Krishna. It's the most intense love, so he wants to give that to the people that probably as great mercy, highest experience.
Maharaj, are the following terms the same thing? Swarup Shakti, internal energy, Hladini Shakti, and Radharani. Are they all the same thing?
Oh, well, Hladini Shakti, we could say Radharani is the personification of Hladini Shakti. Hladini Shakti is part of the internal Shakti of the Swarup Shakti. We know that we have the Hladini, Samvrit, and Sandini Shaktis. They're all the internal energy, or the Swarup Shakti of the Lord, of which the supreme one is the Hladini Shakti. That's the basic quality of Krishna himself, is bliss. Okay? So that's the most important part. But they're all part of the Swarup Shakti of Krishna. And then the Hladini is manifested as Radharani, but also as Lakshmi and all the other consorts as well.
So is there a personification of that internal energy as a whole?
Not that I know of.
And also, in one of the slides, we were discussing the levels of aparad, serious, medium, or mild.
Yeah.
Which one had Bharat Maharaj committed in a previous life?
It's hard to say because it just mentions in passing, one of the commentators said, yes, he committed previous aparad, and the effect of that aparad, of course, not that he had done an aparad when he was in Baba stage. This one actually refers to an aparad in Baba stage due to association with some person who was an aparad, or something like that, so we developed some tendency to commit aparad in Baba stage.
And what serious means probably a Vaishnava aparad where we have some
Hostility or something like that. And a non-serious one would be something like an accidental aparad.
as in the case of the story of Rupa Goswami, who laughed when the crooked sage came by, and then the sage got upset and was laughing at me because I'm lame. And then Rupa Goswami understood something's wrong with the sadhana. It was not sadhana, but his bhajana, and he was getting less and less taste for Krishna. So he went to Sanatana Goswami and said, "What's wrong?" And Sanatana Goswami must have played some aparad against his Vaishnava. And he said, "I'm just sitting in my little hut here, chanting and meditating on Krishna's pastimes. I don't do any aparad." Accidentally, somebody may have been offended. So then he said, "What to do?" He said, "Well, you have to find that person and apologize to him." He said, "I don't know who it was." How can I find him? But he was desperate, so he thought, and then he said, "I'll hold a big festival. Festival means have a big feast for everybody." So he had a big feast and invited all the people of Vrindavan. And then he looked for the person who wasn't there, and he found out one person wasn't there. It was that particular sage who had been offended by his laughter, which wasn't for him anyway. He was laughing at the pastime of Krishna. But the sage got offended, so he apologized to the sage, and then he recovered his bhajan. That's accidental, so it's not so serious. It's a weakling.
But didn't we say that on the prema level it's not possible to commit aparads? So how did...
Yeah, bhava. It's bhava.
But Rupa Goswami's supposed aparad...
Oh, yeah. So while we're in the material world, there's always accident. This is not intentional, obviously. So even if it's not an aparad, some person may take offense and get upset, as the sage did. And there was no intention on his part of laughing at him at all. He was laughing at Krishna's pastimes, but the sage did it otherwise. So in the material world, as long as we're here, then there's going to be some problem like that. Spiritual world, no problem, but the material world, yes, it is possible. Nevertheless, the devotees in prema are protected, so there's nothing going to happen. Yeah. There is that possibility of you can do something. So if one gives up the material body and goes to the spiritual world, that's one difference, that there's no possibility in the spiritual world of aparadha. But the other is that the experience will also be greater because as long as you live in the material body, the prema cannot fully express itself. There's a limitation of the material body. So the full expansion of the prema will take place in only the spiritual body and spiritual world. There's a little bit of difference. Having prema in the body and outside.
And you were showing that these two parts, the Raga part and the Vaidya part. So can we say that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has, like in a way, said that we shouldn't go the Raga path and we should only follow the, is that the conclusion?
No, he hasn't said we shouldn't follow, but in the beginning stages we should not prematurely practice it and try to do something we're not qualified for. If we develop that taste and we can follow the practice of absorption and pastimes and chanting and or the smarna, remembrance, etc., fine, we can do it. So our forbids it. But we don't prematurely do it. And the other, of course, is that Swarup Siddhi, the Siddha Pranam, that we don't just take that as a sign of advancement simply because we get it. So that's why we encourage you to, it's just like, we get it and we think we're finished. And we got Raga and that's it, without practicing. So if we're going to get it, we should practice it.
And the other question is, when you were showing about how to get prema, we read again and again that when we follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gives out love of Krishna freely. So, in a sense, it looks like you don't have to do anything, just go there and stand before Mahaprabhu and you get it. But on the other side, you also have all these, as you were mentioning, it may take millions of life also to achieve that state. So what is the mercy of Mahaprabhu? How do we understand that part?
Well, if we don't have Mahaprabhu, then it's almost impossible to get Radha Krishna, because he's the only qualified person to deliver because he is Krishna. If it's Vishnu, how can he deliver Radha Krishna? Lakshmi is striving to join the Rasa dance, but she cannot do it. So obviously they're on different levels. So it's only someone equal to Krishna who can actually deliver Radha Krishna to the people. And Kali Yuga people also. So he's the most merciful, and then he wants to give Radha Krishna to the most fallen people in Kali Yuga. So therefore, he is the vehicle to do it. Now, it may take us many lifetimes, but at least by accepting the process of Nam Sankirtan and the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we can get it. So, but otherwise we can't. Very, very possible.
Maharaj, like you mentioned yesterday that Puri Dham is a little bit lower than Vrindavan, but higher than Dwarka. When Mahaprabhu was there, he's always saw Vrindavan in Puri.
Yeah.
So, how do you understand Mahaprabhu always saw is a good Giriraj there?
But it was somewhat of separation also.
The mood of separation.
Yeah, as we see with the Rath Yatra and all that, taking Krishna back to Vrindavan type of thing. So it's also a separation.
In the flow, you showed that Vaidhi would sometimes lead to Aishwarya Prema, and Mercy would lead to Raganuga would lead to Kevala Prema.
Yeah.
So for a sadhaka, because the Swarupa is eternal, whether he's going to be in the Aishwarya Prema, is that right?
No, according to our sadhana.
Oh, the Swarupa.
Yeah, so if you do sadhana, bhakti, and vaidhi, then generally you get the prema with that vaidhi influence. Regardless of swarupa or us or anything, it's just that your practice usually determines the result. That's why there's an emphasis here on initially doing uttama bhakti. Don't mix material desires with desires for liberation, otherwise that will dilute the result, and you get something like salokya without the prema, or with Shantarasa or something like that, and you don't get the higher aspects of prema. So from the very beginning we have to practice in the proper way. It's obvious that if we worship Krishna, we go to Krishna, worship Vishnu, we go to Vishnu, worship Rama, we go to Rama. It's not that you worship Rama and suddenly you end up in the local with Krishna, so well, who are you? Yeah, so according to our, what we choose to worship and how we worship, that matures into the realization that we have actually in our relationship.
But in the case of Gopakumar, I think he already has that attraction to Krishna, but he goes through different methods. So I thought that the Swarupa is always fixed and.
It's hard to say because you could say in one sense what we choose as our sadhana, maybe that's because of our fixed nature or whatever like that.
Okay.
But obviously, then we could also say that people who do jnana and they're fixed with the impersonal Swarupa, something like that. How do we do that, Okay, so, and then if they remove all the coverings, they don't have any Swarupa. So it's through the process of the sadhana that we develop the Swarupa in the sense of, an actual spiritual body with a particular bhava. Now, of course, the Atma itself has a Swarupa even if he's in the impersonal Brahman, but it's just not manifested as a particular form. So generally it's through what we practice and we get that as a result, which is justifiable from the point of view of Krishna. He sees what we want and then he responds to that with his particular form that he gives us to worship. While we actually see the form.
It's not eternal. Swarupa is not eternal.
Well, there's two meanings of Swarupa. One is the Swarupa, the general Swarupa of the Jiva. Yeah. He is eternally in one position as a Jiva, eternal, particle, point of consciousness, who's different from the Supreme Lord. The sense of I is there. He's a doer, he's a perceiver, a knower, actor, it's an action, all these things are, has a capacity for bliss. These are all Swarupa of the Jiva, his very nature, which never changes. But then we have the other Swarupa, which they call the Vigraha, or Chid Vigraha, the spiritual form that can manifest in the spiritual world. So that develops through the sadhana bhakti, but it's not developed through the sadhana jnana or yoga. They simply take away the material body and the subtle body, and you're left with the aha. In the process of bhakti, because you establish a relationship, then gradually, and you want to serve, how do you serve? You have to have a body to do that in the spiritual world. So their spiritual body manifests accordingly. So is it spiritual or material, or is it eternal or not? It has to be eternal for spiritual, so everything's eternal. It's manifests at that point. And the question is, where is it manifest from? Is it already in the jiva? Or is it not in the jiva? That's a little bit of a, maybe not a very intelligent question, because inside, outside, spiritual world, Atma is kind of meaningless when it comes to spiritual things, because that's the space-time concept we have. Where is it in the spiritual world or in us or whatever? We say it's all in Krishna ultimately. And then Krishna manifests it with that particular jiva. But as the Swarup Shakti is eternal, so all the Swarupas are also, those vigrahas are also, you can say, eternal. Manifested at a certain time, according to the jiva's desire and the will of the Lord. So like the bhava itself, which is eternal, but manifests in the jiva, Nitya Krishna Prema, that is manifest in the jiva, it's eternal, but it manifests in the jiva. It wasn't there before, obviously. If it was there, then we would have Prema already. It's not there. No, it manifests in the jiva. But it's eternal at the same time. Krishna Swarup Shakti.
So Maharaj, is this correct? You can go from Vaidhi to Raghunaga and then to Bhava and Prema, or can you go straight from Vaidhi to Bhava?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Vaidhi, Uta, Bhava, and then like the Sri Sampradaya. Yeah, they start with Vaidhi Bhakti, they progress to Bhava, they go to Prema, and they go to Vaikuntha. Yeah. And to worship Krishna, you can go that way also and get a Aishwarya Goloka or Dwarka. And if you go to Raghunaga, then you can go to the spiritual world. It's either way. Or you can do Vaidhi sadhana, you can switch to Raghunaga also, and go on Raghunaga.
Can Raghunaga itself ever be a starting point, or do you have to start from Vaidhi and then
No,
go to
you could
Raghunaga?
start from Raghunaga also. Vishnu Chakravarti mentions that in the Raghunaga Chandrika. Okay. we start like that. In fact, most of the Gaudiya Sampradaya was only Raganuga, no Vaidya at all. And we just teach Raganuga more or less. But and that's the emphasis in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, those things. Emphasis on Raganuga. But because of the fallen nature of, I guess, the people of Kali Yuga, Bhaktisiddhanta and Prabhupada emphasize more of the Vaidya aspect in the beginning. And it's also convenient for organizations as well to do that. You cannot regulate Raganuga so much, it's an individual thing, so you can't set standards in the same way. And you can do that for Vaidya